Good evening. One of the country's biggest workers' unions has told Look North that they fear that some companies are taking advantage of the recession to try and change employees' terms and conditions. Today, butchers at an East Yorkshire food factory went on strike because of contract changes, which they say will cut their wages by almost a third. But the company says it needs to save money to protect jobs and that the workers are still some of the best paid in their industry. Our business correspondent Paul Murphy has this report.
From 5 o'clock this morning, around 80 striking workers picketed the gates of Cranswick Foods. Nearly all of them are butchers who say they're facing a significant cut in pay as new contracts are brought in.
No matter who you ask here, they will tell you we are doing more work now for less money.
The changes in their terms and conditions come as the company modernises its production process.
These people haven't seen a pay rise in real terms from this company for over a decade. They've had to work more hours, they've had to work harder and faster, and they want to pay them less money for that. And now that position is unacceptable for our members.
Cranswick is one of the UK's biggest pork processors and says even when the changes are introduced, its butchers will be on some of the most competitive rates in the industry.
The men on strike are saying that this company is doing very well. Now is not the time to squeeze them on their salaries.
The industry as a whole is under very hard times, be that the wider industry of the actual pig producers themselves, who are really suffering with rising feed costs.
Cranswick itself, though, cannot be described as suffering. It delivered record profits last year.
The picket line is unlikely to affect the operation of the factory. The butchers make up less than 10% of the workforce here. But the longer it goes on, the more embarrassing it becomes to one of East Yorkshire's most prestigious companies.
The dispute comes as workers at the Greencore bakery in Hull travel to the company's headquarters in Dublin to protest at changes to their conditions. Greencore has said that basic pay at the factory remains unchanged. Unions claim an increasing number of businesses are using the economy as an excuse to cut pay.
Some companies are being, very sensible, and we're being very sensible in situations where we need to support companies that indeed are facing difficulties in the economy. There are other companies that are taking advantage of the situation and they're using it to scare employees.
The picketing butchers say they'll be back tomorrow and the next day until they get a fair deal from their employer. Something Cranswick believes they've already got. Paul Murphy, BBC Look North in Preston, east of Hull.
Well, Professor Chris Bovis is an expert in business law at Hull University and he's in the studio with us now. Professor Bovis, good evening to you. Thank you for coming in. Do you think that employers are taking some advantage of the recession at the moment?
There is a widespread rumour that the economic climate allows some employers to take advantage of the significantly harsh conditions and put a lot of pressure on workforce and change terms and conditions of employment.
But if employers are telling us that it's either this or jobs, then it's the best option, isn't it, to reduce pay?
One option is this, indeed. It's the best option according to the employer. The employee also, and the unions have a different option. They can see productivity, they can see efficiencies and savings coming through a different way. Like in many European countries, we see a collective approach towards moving out of the recession and towards more prosperous times.
Yes, you think this is all very depressing here, don't you? Is it different in Europe then?
Slightly different, because the union law or the industrial relations are much more different in the European countries. France, Germany, Italy, Spain have very different structured industrial relations with collective bargaining and the power of the unions much more difficult.
But the alternative here to changing pay and conditions is losing people altogether, isn't it? And that's got to be far worse.
Potentially, yes, indeed. But also there are other options, as I mentioned to you, that productivity and rationalization or reorganization of the business could be achieved. For example, a recent study and a recent approach of the business secretary, Vince Cable, in this country is trying to create a more streamlined approach to financing strategic industries in the UK, allowing the best practice and best examples of other countries such as Germany.
And what we've talked about today, can you see that happening more often in the next few months?
I do think so.
Professor, very good to see you. Thank you very much.